Ladies and gentlemen, the first program of the day is Pluribus. Out of many, what? Please welcome to the stage Brian Kilmeade, Senator Mike Lee, and the chairman of the American Conservative Union, Matt Schlapp.
We don't know where to stand. So, Matt, you certainly know how to pack them in.
Yes,
you had an idea.
What time is it? 5:30 in the morning?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. You're wide awake. You haven't slept in months, right?
I have not had a wink of sleep for 2 days. That is accurate.
Wow. So Matt Schlapp is working Radio Row, and we have Senator Mike Lee, who is working 24 hours a day, too. I think I just saw you on about an hour ago on Fox talking about, I think, the latest FISA. If you're not talking about that, you're very much a player in Washington and around the country. That was always the intention, right?
Always the intention. We have to restore liberty. We've got to make sure that the government stays in its lane and out of yours.
All right, Matt, I think they support that. You never look stressed, but tell everyone what's going on around the country, what went on yesterday that's got you so enthused.
I have to say, I think you all agree, the best part of CPAC is just walking up and down these halls and talking to each other. Let me tell you, despite what is said about us, we are joyful people. We are optimistic people. We love our country. We actually just want to be able to run our businesses, raise our families, live our unique lives. And so I think what's got everyone fired up this year, Brian, specifically, are two things. First thing is, where is it? Where's my theme? America versus socialism. Over there, America versus socialism. It's a very intended theme. Our view is it's not capitalism versus socialism, because socialism isn't just about economics. Socialism, we believe, gets to the very core of violating the dignity of the individual human being that has God-given rights. And that's got us pretty fired up.
You know, it's pretty interesting because in the past, people have said Democrats would get very angry when conservatives would turn around and say, you're calling me a socialist, how dare you? I just want to up taxes on the upper class. I want to give a working class a break. That's not socialism. I want to maybe enhance entitlements. But now the front runner on the left says, I am a socialist. Oh, and those 1970s tapes you have of me praising Fidel Castro, I would like to update them and say the same exact thing, only instead of black and white, I'm going to say it in color. Does that astound you, Senator Mike?
Well, he is consistent. We have to give him that.
He's consistent, yeah.
And we're talking about Bernie Sanders.
Socialism is as socialism does. One of the things that differentiates Bernie Sanders from others is that he actually acknowledges he's a socialist. He's far from the only one in the United States Senate, sadly enough. But look, socialism is about the idea that government is there not just to protect life, liberty, and property. In other words, it's not just there for them to make sure that we don't hurt each other or take each other's stuff. No, for them, socialism and government are something that work hand in hand to guide you from cradle to grave, to provide for your every need. But the problem with that is a government that promises to provide everything for you can take everything away from you. In our common human experience, that is what happens.
So to push back a little, Matt, there's a lot of good people who say, wow, what happened in 2008 when I watched my parents lose everything, what happens so often where I can no longer afford a house, maybe like my parents could, they say, well, I need some safety, I need security. And that's where the word socialism seems something to embrace you. So what do you say to good people who seem to see the positives of socialism to give maybe somebody a cushion should things go wrong?
Two quick things. It's not that we're saying that an individual American can't choose to be a communist or whatever he or she wants to be. What Bernie Sanders and the rest of these people, including Barack Obama, let's not let Barack Obama off the hook, they said they want to transform America. They didn't say they wanted to improve America. They didn't say they wanted to clean America up a little bit. They said they wanted to fundamentally change America. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they all like to talk about these New Deal programs. Oh, you must be against Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security. You all paid into all those programs. They were never about freebies. It was always about we got to have a program where people can pay in. Now, maybe it was fuzzy math, but the intention was that will hold on to these resources to give you something when you need it. What they're talking about today, Brian, is nobody pays anything except the rich. By the way, the rich is all of you. It's anybody with a job is rich. The rich will take care of giving freebies to everybody.
Right.
That is the big radical new step that you're hearing from every one of these Democrats running for president.
But most of these programs are flat out unaffordable because people are doing the math even amongst Democrats, and they're saying, are you kidding? Free college. Oh, we're going to pay off your school debt. By the way, if you're over 35 and you paid off your school debt or 40, you're suckers, because if you just had to hold out a little bit and we'll write those checks, then there's free preschool from 0 to 4, Medicare for all, so that's free health care. And then, of course, we're going to transform the energy industry, and that's going to cost everybody, the new Green Deal. Every family watching right now, $75,000. They just did the math. So when you go up there and have somebody promise all this, it sounds good. What's it going to take for people to do the math, Senator Mike?
They're going to have to do the math, and when they do the math, they realize there's not enough money on the planet that could ever fund that. Another important question that they've got to ask as they're doing the math is, what is it in the Constitution that gives the government, this government, the one based in Washington, D.C., any authority to do any of this? Remember, a right is something the government cannot do to you. It is not and never can be understood as something the government must take from someone else to provide for you.
He must be a professional. He's so much quicker than me. He just gets to the point.
I think that I saw you work in Radio Row, and I know you've done this before. When you hop on and put those headsets on and talk to people around the country, yesterday you were talking to activists around the country at CPAC, and I know the numbers are greater. Do you notice the series of questions are different? Now that we're almost a full term of Donald Trump, now that we're on the precipice of having an opponent, do you notice the intensity picking up? Do you notice the questions being any different?
Well, I'll say one thing. I believe that this year's CPAC 2020, is really the start of the presidential campaign. We'll know Saturday who won the South Carolina primary. We'll know if the person who's saying they're okay with being called a socialist wins the South Carolina primary. Does he do well? So I think that brings a heat to the moment. The fact is, we're going to have eventually a Democratic nominee, even if they try to rig it, stop it, change the rules, have a brokered convention, whatever's going to happen over there. Eventually, we're going to have somebody.
Right.
And that person's going to take on President Trump. The second thing is, the poll that I think is the most instructive for all of us is not all these head-to-head polls and everything else. It's how the American people feel. Look at consumer confidence. It's off the charts. It's through the roof. The American people, not just in this room, but the American people generally, are happier under the last several years than they were any day of the Obama administration. So is it true? By the way, when you feel better, what do you do? In our case, when we feel better, we seem to have another child, but people do all kinds of things. They spend more money, which happens to coincide with that. They do things, they feel optimistic, and they make investments. And I think that's the most important. I think people feel pumped. I think we're going to have a huge turnout in this presidential election. Right. By the way, that's true for the other side, too. I think there's a chance there's going to be a huge turnout over there. But it comes down to these fundamentals. These Democrats aren't talking about tinkering with pre-existing conditions and stuff. No, it's about changing how we even think of America.
I'll ask you both this. What's the difference between the Democrats nominating John Kerry, Al Gore, Barack Obama, and them nominating any of those individuals that we saw on the stage on Tuesday night? Senator Lee?
I would say that the Democratic Party has unmasked itself for what it really is. Democrats used to avoid, like the plague, the moniker of socialism. The idea that our government could ever become something that would provide your every need from your birth until your death. The idea that they're completely untethered from anything in the Constitution's enumerated powers. They're no longer focusing on Article 1, Section 8. They're no longer focusing on the things that only the federal government can do, like national defense, weights and measures, trademarks, copyrights, and patents, regulating commerce between the states and with foreign nations. No, they're talking about having the government become your health care provider, your banker, your nanny, your watchdog, having the government lie to you and spy on you, and requiring the government to force you to work months out of every single year. In a word, the Democratic Party has become the party of socialism. I don't think we're ready for that, and I know you aren't.
Right. So
I'd like to add one thing to the list. They seem to like the idea of people other than the voters deciding who the president is, which goes along the lines of your coup idea.
you have some big-time donors making it clear they want Democrats to stand up and push back against Bernie Sanders getting the nominations, which you're referring to. And Bernie Sanders is saying, if I have the most delegates but not enough delegates, are you really going to take it away from me? And if they do, my sense is the one thing Bernie Sanders supporters and Donald Trump supporters have, and that's passion. My sense is if you thought it was a big deal when Hillary Clinton got the nomination because of super delegates, that's going to be child's play compared to what we're going to see when they come to Milwaukee again. But I got to ask you, people watching right now will say, and we've heard it before because we have the 24-hour news channels. Fox News is, I know, all you watch.
Did you say Fox News?
Yes.
Okay.
So people say, well, you guys are talking about Bernie Sanders the same way, Democrats talking about Bernie Sanders the same way Republicans talked about Donald Trump, an outsider that will destroy the down ticket if he actually gets the nomination. Some people would never buy into that, and some never-Trumpers haven't. And, you know, Jeb Bush is one too. So, and I know you're friends with both families. So what do you say to people who say this is the same thing? You guys tried to push away Donald Trump the same way Democrats are trying to push away Bernie Sanders.
There is a similarity, which I believe, and it happened in this room. You remember CPAC 2015, CPAC 2016. We had a big family conversation about whether or not we had to throw away the way we normally pick presidential nominees for the Republican Party. Not all of us in this room are Republicans, and CPAC is conservative, not just Republican. And we had this whole conversation. If things had gotten so bad and people had failed us so extravagantly, we had to try an outsider. Well, that's been resolved. We needed the outsider. That's pretty clear. And by the way, I had the good fortune, some of you as well, and we've talked in the hallway about it, who knew President Trump when he was Donald Trump. And the things he said to me when he was even thinking about running for president that he would do, he has simply done, which is very refreshing.
Right.
Now, let's be honest, up until the Republican convention in 2016, there was an attempt to try to derail him.
How about on stage, Ted Cruz going out there, basically going against Donald Trump at the Republican convention as Donald Trump walks in? It was one of the most electric moments that I can remember.
Electric is a word for it. And I would just say that for Bernie Sanders in the Democratic Party, that what you have with Bernie Sanders is the following. Donald Trump got the nomination for the Republican Party. Just remember, he stubbed his toe a little bit in Iowa, lost by it to to Senator Cruz by a small amount, and then he just ran the table. He cleaned their clocks. There was no question where Republicans were vis-a-vis who they wanted to be their nominee. If Bernie Sanders does the same thing, and I'd say he's got 2 victories so far, or 3.
They're still counting in Iowa.
They are still counting. They might still be counting in Nevada.
They're not really quite sure.
Yeah, that's very good.
Right.
It's actually quite alarming. It makes sense why all their healthcare plans and economic plans scared the bejesus out of us, because it doesn't add up so good. But the point is that if Bernie Sanders does the same thing, what's the lesson, y'all? The lesson is exactly what Senator Lee is saying. The Democrats are voting for a socialist because that is what they are. And that is why he will be winning. And if he goes into that convention with the most votes and they start talking about how let the convention work its will, let me tell you, he's from Utah, I'm from Kansas. They tell us that the Electoral College is racist and terrible. What they're basically telling you is they need their version of the Electoral College to pick their nominee, and I think we should say that's ridiculous.
Absolutely. Just on the Donald Trump theme, Senator Mike Lee, is President Trump a conservative?
Yes.
When were you convinced?
I became convinced after he became president of the United States. Look, I was late to the Trump train. I was about as late as one can be to the Trump train. I had my doubts about whether he was a conservative. I had my doubts about whether he was electable. The fact is, after I met with him and then after I had subsequent conversations with him when he became president of the United States, I saw him do exactly what he told us he was going to do. I saw him move our embassy to Jerusalem in Israel. I saw him fight to take down Obamacare, and he got really close, and but for somebody doing this at the very last minute, he would have won. I saw him cut taxes and deliver real, meaningful, middle-class tax relief to the American people. I saw him take down regulations, restoring separation of powers and federalism in one fell swoop, as he promised and delivered on a promise to take down at least 2 regulations for every new one he put in place. I saw as he has nominated and overseen the confirmation of coming up on 200 conservative textualist originalist judges. In addition to Justice Brett Kavanaugh and Justice Neil Gorsuch.
Woo! I believe Senator Mike Lee was on that list along with your brother, right?
Yes.
We're happy.
For awkward dinner table conversation.
But that was very impressive. A couple of things. Tim Scott kind of caught my attention this week, senator from South Carolina. He said, for those of you who think that President Trump got locking
Hey, hush your mouth.
with Senator Sanders, with Senator Sanders is going to be easy, you're wrong. He said, you're really mistaken because Senator Sanders is being marginalized like Donald Trump, the citizen, was, and he sees worry there in a matchup. What is he getting at?
Yeah, I said this morning. I think when it comes to the presidential race and really all these races, let me just make a bold prediction. I think the House of Representatives is very much at play.
And you don't think, even a few weeks ago, you might not have said that.
Let me tell you, what happened to Senator Lee in the Senate when he had to watch Brett Kavanaugh get accused of the most scurrilous attacks. He's a friend of ours. Those attacks you couldn't have picked somebody that they didn't match up with more dramatically. But they were willing to do anything to keep the 5th vote from getting on that court. And what did the voters do? They added conservatives to your majority. They added people like Marsha Blackburn and Josh Hawley to your majority. I think that's what's at play on the House. I think that the American people reject the squad. I think they reject Adam Schiff. I think that they're embarrassed for Adam Schiff that he lost a foot race to Jerry Nadler to get to the microphone to close the argument. How is it possible? I mean, he was trying to move and Nadler just went fast.
Right.
And I was like, wow.
It's Carl Lewis there.
That's like an Olympic moment of slowness. It was amazing. So I think that this is, just to finish this up, I think that we should be very sober about being overconfident that one candidate will be easier than another candidate. Each one of these candidates will be different. These socialists mean business. They mean to take this country and transform it. They're going to do anything to do that. So we better be ready for that.
Absolutely. And I think the one way to sum up where we're at right now is actually to look back. Senator Mike Lee, we have a relationship. We have the same publisher, and he's got a passion for history.
Oh, wait a minute. There's a couple of books we have to talk about. Right?
No, well, I'm just talking about it in our
country.
country.
And a book signing.
Right, yeah, we'll do that later. But Senator Lee, I think that fundamentally people have an easier time making a choice if they understand where America came from and why people came here. And that's when you're making your argument about socialism and free markets. You're really talking about why there's an America and why we left the old world for the new world. And I think if people understand where we came from and how we got here, through the hiccups, the mistakes, and how we always got better, they would have a much easier choice. We want to come to this country for an opportunity to be successful, not a guarantee. We want to compete. And if we don't win, it is okay. You go out there and give it your all. And all people came here for was an opportunity. And what I think people are offering is a guarantee. But if you lose that will to fight and compete, you lose the American spirit.
That's exactly right. And, you know, Brian, you're channeling perfectly. I can't resist the plug now because you've set it up well. In a book I wrote a few months ago called Our Lost Declaration, From King George to the Deep State, I go through what the American people have experienced. In some ways, there's nothing new in government. People will always pitch to you, be loyal to King George III. He'll keep us safe. He'll keep us secure. He'll provide us with what we need. The fact is, he was taxing us too much. He was regulating us oppressively. He was making us fight wars we didn't want to fight, and we weren't listened to. We weren't heard in his government. That's why we became our own country. That's why we fly the Stars and Stripes and no longer the Union Jack. We've got the same choice to make today. Do we choose captivity or freedom? Do we choose tyranny or liberty? I choose liberty, and I know every one of you will choose the same thing.
I always thought the people that didn't have the have-nots wanted the opportunity to be part of the haves. And we didn't resent successful people. We wanted to do reverse forensics and find out how they got there. I laugh when people put down billionaires. There's a self-made billionaire on the stage, Mike Bloomberg, who lost his job at 39 years old and didn't know where he was going to go and ended up one of the richest men in America. I believe that's a story that he should underline. Instead, he's apologizing for it and said, I'll give my money away, I promise. That's not the point. You know how many people are employed by successful people? The people that own my company? Thank God every day that they became billionaires because they started Fox News, they started Fox Nation, Fox Business, then they provided careers from entry level to the executive level, and they have health care. Those people buy houses, and guess what? They want to compete to get bigger houses and better plans and better jobs. That's what people used to talk about and laud and aspire to. Now people are embarrassed to say it.
You know, you keep speaking about bigger houses, and I can't help but think about Bernie Sanders because he has several
Which
houses.
house?
Yeah, he has several houses. Maybe some are modest.
And
okay.
a camp.
A camp, that sounds kind of extravagant, but okay. Did you know everyone has a camp? I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
I learned that.
I don't have one.
They have a
Where do I
camp.
get it?
You got to get a camp. Apparently, well, he's going to give you one if he wins, so it just won't be his.
Right.
But so it's amazing. These millionaires. Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. Nothing. I don't demonize millionaires, billionaires, trillionaires. That'd be good. I'd like to be the first one. That'd be kind of cool.
Okay.
But here's what I think is interesting about Mike Bloomberg. He said on the stage that he's giving all of his money away, yet he's worth more every year. So I keep thinking, like, you might want to give it away more quickly,
I know.
number one. Number two, I think the Trump economy must be doing great because he spent all this money to be president, and he's worth more today than he was when he first started spending the money.
Yeah.
It's because of the Trump economy. So maybe we shouldn't be messing around with the Trump economy. But Bernie Sanders, he believes in wealth redistribution. He's got millions of dollars. Nothing wrong with having millions of dollars. Give them away. Why do you have to transform America and destroy all of our financial viability? You just do it yourself.
I know.
Why can't they start with themselves?
I'm not sure.
They always have to start with us.
So that's really that's really the message that I got, especially when I sat down and we did a special. You helped us out with a special looking back at our country. Things become very clear if you know where we were. And sadly, in our schools, we're not going over the American dream anymore, the American story. We're glossing over it and apologizing for it. So I think that whoever becomes president next or control of Congress next has to reestablish American history in classrooms. And then I think that we'll back to both parties will have a nuanced difference between the two. The more charismatic man or woman will win as opposed to one that wants to go way over here and one that wants to just keep us on the right path.
Amen.
Yep.
Totally agree. You agree?
Absolutely. It does make me wonder with Democratic presidential candidates making more and more money every year. Maybe they're just running to make sure that Donald Trump gets reelected so they will make more money. Let's help make them rich. Let's reelect Donald Trump.
Yes, that's right.
And I am hard to say this. I have a series on Fox Nation, the app that all of you have, and it's called What Made America Great. We've got 21 features up there, and people are clicking on it a lot, and I'm getting a lot of people saying, I never knew that. And they never taught me that. So I think people, sadly, have to go reach for our past in order to understand where we are.
That's exactly right. And Brian, we appreciate you gave a great talk. Was it last year at the Reagan dinner or the year before?
No, it was last year. They're blending together.
I'm losing track of CPACs. Right. How many of you heard Brian talk? Walk us through our American history. It was wonderful. And we very much appreciate you being here this morning, bright and early. You're used to getting up at 4:30.
Yeah, this is sleeping in.
This was really not a big deal. You get a day off.
Yeah, I got a Fox Nation shoot here. I'm talking about women's suffrage. I can't believe it took us 70 years to say it's a good idea to have women vote. Yeah. But we went through that.
By the way, that was Republicans, but we don't need to get into that.
Really, Republicans delivered that.
Utah was first, by the way.
It was a good move. I'm supportive of women voting. I'll go on the edge right there. And I'm able to do the radio show right here.
They might twist your words later in an article somewhere. You know that could happen.
It's never happened to me before. I always tell people, if you like me, don't Google me.
Yeah, that's right. So you're used to getting up early. For Senator Lee, this is very hard because the Senate gets started around 2:30 in the afternoon or something.
Well, I'm about 25 years younger than the median age in the Senate, so.
But in the news, you're trying to reform FISA. You're knee deep in that. We're also trying to fight the coronavirus. We got to figure out, I thought we would be teaming up on that. We're not. It seems we've gone to political corners, which is sad and tragic. But there's so much going on in the era of Trump. So good luck with the president on Saturday, the vice president a little bit later today. And Matt, I'm in awe of what you put together. Your Mercedes, what you guys put together.
And our team. Our team is amazing.
Right.
Yeah.
But I've never seen somebody with more responsibility look less stressed than Matt.
You know, French fries are amazing things.
All right, that just relaxes you.
French fries and martinis.
Comfort.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you very much
it.
for having me, and I'll be doing the radio show later. Senator Mike Lee, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.